Hello guys, Ken Salvail here today, talking a little bit about irrigation and watering. And a question that I get quite often is how long should I run my sprinklers? And this is a real important question. So it's something that you can't just answer with one answer. Actually, the one answer is you water. Say if you're watering a lawn, you would water it until you get approximately a half an inch to maybe even a little bit more than a half an inch of water over your lawn. So the only way you can tell that is by taking a tin can or some plates or pans, like cake pans, that sort of thing, and setting them out over your lawn area in different locations. Run your sprinklers, because we have no idea what kind of a head you have in your lawn, or how that's going to cover, or whether it's a perfect coverage or poor coverage. But you'd set out these pans throughout your irrigation area, and then you'd run your irrigation overnight on one of your normal cycles, and then go out in the morning before it has a chance to evaporate and have a look in these pans. Hopefully the pans are all sort of similar, so that they have, they'll show the same amount of water. But you'd have a look at these pans and see that these particular ones all have, say, that half an inch of water in it, or a quarter of an inch of water in it, or whatever they have. That's going to tell you a lot of information about your sprinklers. So your duration, the time that it runs, equates to how deep the water goes. And so this is a real important factor to note when it comes to irrigation, is that the time it runs equals how deep it waters. So that's a weapon we know, and we can use that as part of our information. So now we set these pans out over the lawn, we run the sprinkler system, and we go out, and ideally we see the same amount of water in each of the pans. That would mean we have even coverage. If we see that one pan is empty, one has a little like a 1/16 of an inch of water, one pan has an inch and a half of water, if they're all different like that, then that's not going to work. It's going to be really difficult to set an irrigation timer to match that. So what that means, that system needs a renovation. You need somebody to go in there and actually calculate how much, what kinds of heads you have to change or adjust or resituate, reposition, so that all the heads have head-to-head coverage, so your each sprinkler's hitting the other sprinkler. Like a sprinkler that's running, it doesn't usually water around the base of it. It's some other sprinkler that waters the base of this one. So, and this sprinkler waters the base of the next one down the row. So they have to hit head-to-head. You have to have that perfect coverage. And then the amount of water that's coming out of those sprinklers has to be a calculated amount. So let's just say that when you do run your sprinklers, all the pans have the same amount of water in them. And let's say that they have about, let's say, a quarter of an inch of water. Well, we mentioned that about a half an inch to maybe a little more than a half an inch of water in your cycle, that would be about the right amount to do a lawn, for example. So then what we know there is that, well, if it's a quarter of an inch, and I ran my time for 10 minutes, so my 10-minute run time gave me a quarter of an inch, how much do I have to set it to get a half an inch? Well, double the time, right? So then I just have to set my timer to 20 minutes then, and then that'll give me my half an inch of water, and you're pretty good. If you feel like, well, Ken said that you need to have a little more than a half an inch, so you set it to 22 minutes, just slightly more. And then you can do the same test again, set your pans out for the next time it waters, let it run its normal cycle now at the 20-minute setting, and now you'll see that they all have that just slightly more than a half an inch of water in that one application. So that's how you kind of whittle it down as far as your timer goes. But a good calculation to remember is that approximately 1/2 of an inch of water equals about 4 inches of depth of irrigation. So that's just it. This doesn't really mean much, because you don't know if your soil is sandy, or if it's clay, or if it's silty, or if it's a mixture, or if it's beautiful black loamy soil, whatever it is. You don't know. But if you have this in your head, that approximately a half an inch of water will water about 4 inches deep on average. Less in some areas, more in others, but it's just a figure that you can use for your own use in calculating. So this just gives you a rough number to calculate with. So now, this is, say, the depth of roots of turf, for example. The turf will have grass roots that are about 6 inches deep. And then if the soil's really good and easy to penetrate, the roots can be quite deep, sometimes even a foot or even 18 inches deep if the turf is really healthy. But with this case, we're going to say about 6 inches deep is about where you want to be watering, 5 to 6 inches deep. So that means about a half an inch of water over your lawn area will be pretty close, just plus maybe a little bit. So go back to your sprinklers. Different types of sprinklers run for different durations. A spray type of sprinkler, and I happen to have one right here, like they'll pop up like this in your landscape, and they just spray, just one straight spray, and they'll cover a given area. Again, head-to-head coverage. So that's going to run, and it's going to run for whatever the duration is. But the nozzle itself, depending on the size of it, it's going to dump out, let's say, just for average, about 2 gallons per minute. So that means this will spray out 2 gallons per minute over the given area that it covers. These spray type of sprinklers are designed to cover areas that are usually less than about maybe 18 feet. So they might cover up to 18, 15, 12, whatever the setting is. And each nozzle will have a different amount of water depending on the coverage of it. So you need to know the specifications of your nozzle. So this is the nozzle here on the top, and that's what we would be replacing or changing to make sure our sprinklers are covering properly. So that's a spray head. Average run time between about 6 minutes and about 11 or 12 minutes. That's all these ones need to run to give you good coverage. So spray heads have a fair bit of water over a small area, so they run for a shorter period of time. Now the rotor heads, which I'll include in this photograph, is that the rotor heads are going to be turning. These are the ones that they get out and they just spray, and they go back and forth over a given area, and they go back and forth. You'll see these on big lawn areas. Well, remember I said this one was about maybe around 2 gallons per minute per head. It's just a number. But the big rotors that cover huge areas, they run also at about 2 gallons per minute per head. So what does that mean? Well, small areas, 2 gallons per minute, short run time. Big areas, 2 gallons per minute, long run time. So if you have rotor heads, you have to run them for a much longer period of time in order to get your half an inch of water. So keep that in mind. Average run time for a rotor sprinkler is more like about 45 minutes per cycle. So if you're new to irrigation adjusting, I really highly recommend that you learn how to use your irrigation timer and run some tests to see what's going on. So this is why you never, under any circumstances, mix your heads, put a spray sprinkler on with a rotor sprinkler. That wouldn't make any sense. You're never going to get any coverage there. So if you have any of these situations, or if you're confused by any of these things that I'm talking about now, is contact your local professional who knows irrigation systems and have them come out and potentially perform an audit, or at least a semi-audit, where they just run through the system and make sure it's set up properly. You'll spend a little bit of money up front, but you'll definitely save a lot of water and a lot of time and a lot of frustration dealing with your watering of your lawns. Now when it comes to shrub beds and things, it's sort of similar, but you just have to know the specifications of your areas. So if I have spray heads watering a shrubby area, well, shrubs have roots a little deeper than what a lawn would have. So then you might have to water a little bit longer in those areas to get the water down a little bit deeper. So the longer the time, the deeper the water goes. So you might have to run these a little bit longer for shrubs or trees, but maybe not as often. So you don't want to have your trees and shrubs and things on with your lawn areas. That wouldn't make any sense because they have different water durations that you have to deal with. So a little introduction to some irrigation here today. Drip lines are common there. Average run time is about 30 minutes, sometimes a little more, a little less, depending on the types of plants. Remember that newly planted plants need water all the time, like quite regularly, literally every day, especially in the summertime. But plants that have been there for years and years and years, they really only need water maybe about once a week, depending on your climate. In some climates where they actually get rain periodically, sometimes they don't need much water at all. So don't waste the water. Learn about your system, learn about your plants, learn. That's how you get your system right, and where you can conserve water, but also have healthy plants too, which is really important. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for tuning in to Grower Coach.